Welcome to the Soul Briety Podcast, where we talk all things from addiction to awakening and the recovery of self, soul, and spirit from being strung out on the greatest drug of all, the external world. This is a place for illuminating conversations that will take you from divided to divine, pain to purpose, and suffering into soul briety. I'm your host, Lindsay Carricarte, and this podcast is for all the rebel souls who have always sought to live deeply, authentically, and fully expressed as the divine badasses you are. Hello, divine badasses. It's Lindsay here, spiritual practitioner, coach, teacher, seeker, and author of Fractured and the Chakras, a no bullshit guide to healing your life. Welcome to another divine download of Soul Briety. And on today's episode, we are talking about what soul briety even is. We are going to be breaking down what sobriety is, why right now is the time for this, and how we move into the state of sobriety. So my question for you is, have you ever had a moment in your life where it was as though everything else, everything external, all the problems and the stressors and the pressures all just melted away? Where maybe you were doing something and in that moment, you just let go of everything that didn't matter besides that very moment. And you were just fully present with whatever it was you were doing. Because I still remember so clearly when I found snowboarding. I was about 15 years old, but by the time I could drive, I used to head out to the mountain every chance I got. And sometimes I would go by myself and sometimes I would go with friends. But one of the most peaceful memories I have from that time in my life was just being on the ski lift, the chair that takes you up the mountain. Sometimes I would have headphones in. Sometimes I would just be listening to the sound of the wind, because let's not forget that, not to date myself, but back then, I either had to try to snowboard with one of those gigantic Walkmans that played a cassette tape, or heaven forbid, I tried to take my Discman out there, because this was pre-era iPods and MP3s. So y'all don't even know the struggle we had to go through. But anyways, I would remember just being out there and, maybe I'd be having a mixtape of my favorite punk rock bands, or maybe I'd be listening to the wind, and I just could feel in those very moments. It was like the rest of my life just melted away, right? When I had that board strapped to my feet and I was going down the mountain, it was like I was free. It was like I was liberated, and all of the pressures and the worries that I had day to day in school were gone. All of the anxieties and the feelings of not being good enough or not being pretty enough or just feeling panicked when I had to talk to people, all of those things that had plagued me my whole life were just gone in those moments, right? And when I look back on it, it was literally like in those moments I felt liberated. So naturally, I became, highly attached and even addicted to these things. And in hindsight, I can understand that it was because when I would get to the mountain, when I would be out there, it was like I was connecting to my true state. I was connecting to my flow state. And so, my friends, that's what we're talking about today. That is what soul briety is all about. And that is the intention I'm setting forth. And so I would love to just take this moment to invite you all in to receive a little affirmative prayer, a spiritual mind treatment, to just set the intention of this episode and call forth this higher meaning and consciousness of what sobriety is, so I can just pass that on to you. So let's just take a deep breath in together, maybe remembering one of those moments from your own life, calling forth that feeling of freedom, of liberation, of just trusting fully in the flow of life. And I just recognize right here, right now, that those feelings, those experiences, those moments, instead of being the rare example, instead of being something that we have to strive for and find and chase, I declare that I recognize right here and right now that those moments, that feeling of liberation, that feeling of peace, that feeling of freedom, that is the truth of who I am. It is the truth of who you are. And in this, I just know that each and every one of you are that powerful, and that freedom, that liberation, that peace, that prosperity, that expression, that is your birthright. Each and every one of you as a perfect divine soul, is here to express more of that. And I know that that is the truth. I know that that is the purpose of life. I know that that is the truth of the divine I am seeking to express through us. So right here, right now, today, I just declare that expression coming forth. I declare right here, right now, each and every one of you are awakening to that remembrance within you as I am calling it forth, calling forth that purpose, calling forth that awakening, that liberation, that expansion that comes when we let go of the limitations, when we let go of the stressors, the things that don't even matter. And I just call into my being, into my consciousness right here, right now, the truth, the knowing that what really matters, what's really real is the feeling within. It is the knowing within of who the fuck you are, of who I am, of who each one of us is. And I just recognize that in each and every one of you. And I am so grateful that you are here. I am so grateful that you are receiving this. And I just declare a powerful conversation today. So let's do this thing as I release my word up. I know that I am the creator. I know that I am that powerful, and I know my word is law. And so it is. So my friends, welcome, 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 right? Because essentially the higher conversation is really about that. It is about knowing that we are the creators. It is about knowing that we are powerful. And when I look back onto my life, when I used to be so attached to snowboarding because that was my one out, it was the one place I felt free, I can recognize in hindsight that the rest of my life didn't feel free. The rest of my life didn't feel powerful. The rest of my life felt disempowering. It felt out of control and overwhelming, right? So I know that some of you listening to this today, you're going to identify with that, right? You're going to see in yourself that same feeling like you're just getting dragged around by life, and that life happens to you and it's not happening for you. And every once in a while, when you're lucky, you get to carve out some time to do something that you love that allows you to feel like you're in the flow of life, right? Who can relate? Give me a yes if you totally relate with that. So my friends, that is why this is so important right now, because here's what I've come to understand through my own development and my own work and my own healing and my own spiritual practices. What I've come to understand is that we've got it backwards. What I've come to understand is that those moments when I was out there on that mountain and I felt so free and I felt so liberated, those are the moments that are true. That is the expression of what is real and true. And the rest of it, the suffering and the disconnection and the struggle that we create for ourselves through our overwhelm and through our beliefs and through our stories, that's not what's real, right? Yes, the contrast serves us. Yes, every moment of anxiety and every moment of suffering and every moment of disconnection and addiction and depression that I had served me. Of course it did. It allowed me to come back into the knowing of myself as a powerful creator. But I also recognize that it is not the truth of life. It is not what's real in life. It's not the point of life. It's not something that you have to just accept as this is the way life is. And that's a really big part of sobriety, because as humans, we have almost been worn down to the place of accepting that this is just the way life is. Disempowering, depressing, overwhelming. And that's the biggest lie we've ever been told. I mean, and I know it's a lie now, but I believed it for a long time. So I know that some of you are going to resonate with this, right? And so the why of this whole conversation is that the world is trying to live without God. And when I say God, I want to reclaim the word God right here, right now. I just declare that I'm reclaiming the word God from any and all dogma or any and all religions or any and all ideas of a man in the sky or a woman in the sky or anybody in the sky. Because God is just simply the pure intelligence, the creative force, the great mystery, the great spirit that holds all things in knowing, right? And we as humans on a large scale have been brought to a place, have created a place where we are trying to live without knowing, without reverence of that essence, right? Without reverence of that intelligence, without a knowing of that intelligence. And when we try to live without a knowing, without a reverence for that intelligence, without an understanding of that intelligence, not as something separate from us. I'm going to say that again. right? So God as an intelligence, not as something separate from you, separate from me, but it is who and what we are. It is all around us. It is the substance that makes up the world, and it is the intelligence that is you, right? At the back of it all, each and every one of us is that God spirit. Yes, we're individualized as souls and then further individualized as humans. And all of that is the expression of God to know itself. And so when we forget that, we create suffering, right? So let's bring this down to the lowest, most physical plane of existence here, the microcosm of the physical plane, where we can look out at the world and recognize that people are dying. Literally, they're physically dying. They're suffering, right? Especially over the last couple of years, this has been amplified and magnified. And there's been more suicides and more drug overdoses and more, untimely, but you know what I mean? Because all death is perfection too. But people are literally exiting the plane in mass because the suffering is so deep that they're just moving into, giving up, right? Giving up hope, checking out. And on the mental plane of existence, if we start to zoom out a little bit, in the mental plane, there's so much distortion. It's like a bad frequency, right? It's like when a record player skips and it's like, right? Or it's like all of a sudden somebody like wails on an acoustic guitar and it's not in tune and it blasts and everybody's like, rah, right? So on the mental plane, there's all this distortion and this bad frequency. It's like static on the radio station, because the thing is we have been looking outside. We haven't been taught that we are the controllers of our thoughts, that we can tune our consciousness and our minds and our thoughts into whatever damn radio station we want. Instead, our minds are being dragged all over the place, and it's like bad frequency, right? And that's painful. It's like when somebody scratches nails on a chalkboard and everything in you retracts, right? So that's what's going on in the disconnected distortion of the mental plane. And then we've got this spiritual plane that, has largely been forgotten. It's been separated, and humans are screaming about death because they're forgetting that they're more than their physical bodies. And there's all this division and distortion because people are over-identifying with who they are in a physical body. And this is all because the spiritual plane has all been but forgotten. Even by people who study it, there's an intellectual knowing, but there's not an embodiment, right? And we need all three planes. We need all three planes to be in our power. And this is really where the enslavement comes in, because if when we're in that distortion and we're in that disconnection, it's easy to control us, right? We reach outside and we're strung out on the matrix. We're strung out on the external world. And that's why sobriety is so much bigger than just drug addiction. Sobriety isn't about just getting over a drug habit or an alcohol habit. This is about reclaiming your power on the deepest soul and spiritual level to recognize and remember and reawaken to the truth of who you are. Because when we look at the external world from the point of division, from over-identification with it, and we think that that is all there is, then it just seems chaotic, it seems distorted, and it seems out of control. But when we can begin to expand our consciousness and zoom out and recognize it is all happening in perfection for all of us to evolve and ascend, and for all of us to evolve, we have got to clear out these patterns of powerlessness, of pain, of suffering, of needing something outside of ourselves to be okay. That's what sobriety is all about, right? Because now more than ever, humans are looking outside of themselves for someone to say, hey, it's okay. For someone to say, hey, you're healthy. For someone to say, hey, you're good. You're valuable. You're worthy. For the bank account to say, hey, you're prosperity. For a doctor to say, hey, you're healthy. For a relationship to say, hey, you're lovable. This is the inversion. Right? When we can begin to bring it back in and recognize, no, my truth is love. My truth is prosperity. My truth is health, because I am infinite spirit. Right? I am backed by the full expression The whole entire universe, the whole entire source, the very same intelligence that made the Rocky Mountains, the Pacific Ocean, the beautiful Fijian Islands, Banff National Park, right? These beautiful, beautiful places, all of the stars in the universe, they didn't fuck up when they made you. They didn't mess up. It didn't mess up when it made me. We are that power. So to sit here and say, I need something outside of myself, be it money, be it drugs, be it a lover, be it a boss that's telling me I did a good job, to recognize that I am free, to recognize that I am worthy, to recognize that I am abundant, that is the biggest misuse of energy I could possibly create. It is the biggest inversion of my own energetic use as a creator. To come back into knowing and recognize that I am the power. I am the divine. Well, that, my friends, is what those beings out there who would like to keep controlling us fear the most. Right? So when we can begin to recognize that, all of a sudden our consciousness begins to expand, because when we bring the unconscious parts of ourselves into the light, our consciousness expands. And our individual consciousness doesn't just expand, the whole collective expands. And that's the work, my friends. That's the how. So the how of all of this, how do we move into sobriety? How do we move into this reclamation, this resurrection, this reawakening of ourselves as divine? How do we do that? And that's the work. That's the good work. That's the work that I do. That's the work that we do in my community that I'm a part of. That's the work that I do in my coaching. It's the spiritual work. It's the shadow work. It's the trauma healing. You guys, each and every one of us has a divine calling to begin to go inside and to unify the parts of ourselves that we have fractured, to heal and reunite the parts of ourselves that we have tried to lock away because we think they're too painful. It's time to heal. We've got to pull the traumas out of our subconscious and release them and heal them and release the dense emotions so that we can clear up the distortion in the mind. When we clear up the distortion in the mind through the healing work and we connect with spirit on a daily basis, we then project a clear, pure signal into the physical world, which equals health, wellness, vitality. So you see, the picture you are projecting in your body and personality into the physical world is like a picture or a radio station coming through. And if you are not in range and directly in line with that station, the song is going to come through staticky and distorted. Is it not? We all remember what that was like. Oh, I drove too far and now I'm losing the song and all this static's coming through. So your work isn't to keep trying to change the external world. It's to go within and clear your channel, attune your mind, remove the distortion, clear out the emotional density that's creating the distortion, and boost your Wi-Fi signal by plugging into spirit daily, more than daily sometimes. And that is it in a nutshell, right? It is the great awakening. We've heard this over and over and over again, right? So sobriety is this awakening, this coming back into the knowing, the awakening of the self as spirit, as powerful, not powerless. You are not a slave. You are here as spirit embodied. And now is the time, because this is ascension. And ultimately, I mean, the universal law of free will allows you to do whatever it is you desire. But I know what I'm here for, and I know that I'm here for the expansion. I'm here for the evolution. I'm here not just to move my own consciousness elevated, but to elevate the whole collective of humanity. I'm here to bring Gaia into a new frequency, into a new density. So if that resonates with you, then this is your call, right? It's the call to begin to remember who the fuck you are. Go back to those moments in your life where you knew who you were, where you released all of the external stuff that wasn't truth, it wasn't alignment, and you allowed yourself to have a momentary glimpse of what it feels like to be one with spirit. Bring forth the memory of that, connect with that, and allow that to be your GPS. That is what will guide you to exactly what you need to heal, exactly what you need to transform, exactly where your work is. You will be guided. You will be guided. I promise you. because I know each and every one of you is divinely backed. You are the divine, and infinite intelligence is who you are, and you have everything you need. I know that you have a purpose, and I know that you are worthy, and I know that you are valuable, and I know that you are here to be the greatest expression of you. And I just call you forth into that, my friends. I invite you. This is me sticking out my hand, inviting you to take this journey with me, to explore this awakening of sobriety, this ascension, this beautiful unfoldment of the remembering and the resurrection of ourselves as beautiful, divine, powerful, powerful, powerful creators of reality. Will you take this journey with me? And so it is. Hey, Divine Badass. Thank you again for tuning in to the Soulbriety podcast, where we talk all things from addiction to awakening and the recovery of self, soul, and spirit from being strung out on the greatest drug of all, the external world. So if you know someone that would benefit from joining in our illuminating conversations, please feel free to share this podcast with a friend. And remember, leave a 5-star review if you loved this episode, if you're loving this message, and you know that you are ready to see the world move into soulbriety. Those reviews really help. And please don't hesitate to connect with me on any of the socials. You can find me on Facebook at Lindsay Carricarte or over on the Instagram at I am Lindsay Carricarte. And be sure to check out the link in my bio and the description for this podcast for some free gifts, resources, your Badass Conscious Creators Guide, as well as meditations and other ways that we can work together. Go out into the world, be wildly you, and have it all. See you next time.